that I have a book. This is my book called Buried Alive, A To-Do List. And it came out from Hanging Loose Press in 2019, which seems like a really long time ago at this point, 2019, but actually wasn't. It's just that 2020 just took so long, as I'm sure we all feel. So I'm going to be reading 4 poems tonight. My first poem is called Detritus, and it was inspired by an old torn American flag that ended up on top of a wall in an alley near my house. And I felt kind of bad about never doing anything about it, and eventually it just disappeared, which made me feel even worse. So I wrote about it. Detritus. Sodden, bunched, flapping, a rag, a flag is snagged on the wall dividing the maze of alleys. I guess blown from a veterans post, a school, a rally by bad March weather. Someone should get a trash bag and what, stuff it in and throw it out? I can't stop going to the bedroom window to see it slump down there in the drizzle. It looks weak, like a stroke patient trying to move her mouth, or a crashed, stunned, ungainly bird. Is it mostly on my property, or that old guy's who puffs stogies in his backyard, or the self-satisfied, expensively spandex joggers? Mold-furred, the wall permits a red and white fold to flop sickeningly out of sight. Like watching porn too long, blankly staring at this worn, bright, wounded thing. The rain starts to drop harder, splattering off it. Flag, goodbye. I'm shutting the blinds. I probably can't reach it anyway. It needs to be someone stronger, more fit, somebody else. In my head, the guilty echo, not I, not I. I'm going to read 2 poems about a tragic event from a few years ago that touched our family. The first of the 2 has a long title. It's called The Girl Who Died Left the Request That My Daughter Return Her Math Textbook to School. Maybe the book had all the answers, except the ones she was looking for, and the loss was incalculable, and what she did just didn't add up. But I really don't want to write that, or to Google some resonant math book titles when I know it was just called mathematics. Waxy and blue and boring, bashed in at the corners, property of the school district of blank. The request to return the book found among statements of political protest and a few pencil sketches of a boy. The young girl in her grave and the book in my daughter's hands and her tears on the book, and then it lay on her bureau and I lifted it to clean, feeling the weight. The truth is that I wanted it out of there. The truth is that I prayed, oh, my dear, the year is ending. Take it back with these last molecules of your friend on earth. Her fingerprints, unique, although all are unique. Her skin and hair, the components of dust. Dust, which is relentless and must be resisted. This poem is on the same theme, and it was inspired by my first encounter with a Quaker religious service. Quaker memorial service for a young girl. We are left in this room to sort it out. Rows of bare pews facing nothing but each other. I can feel faces on either side of me, like something burning. One narrow door stands open, painful blaze of sunlight. Late morning sparrows forage among gravestones, like in a little movie. Flickering yellow butterfly skims above the ground, vanishes. No voice but our voices, no thought but our thoughts, no guide through the land of the dead or the living, but this is not my belief, not my place. Her classmates are seated together, each holding a sunflower, cut and dying, the giant black center full of holes. They don't know quite what to do with them. Tears drip on their hands. Some are crushed. Some look bewildered or lost. Some choose to speak. Their voices float up, are pummeled by grief. Why did she? How could she? And God and all. I am left. I remember. They understand just enough and nothing, like the rest of us. A boy jumps up, face flushed, stumbles over many knees and runs out. Did he ever come back in? If I could root her out of their consciousness, all of them, I would place the flower of her in a clear tumbler, press the dead petals in a crumbling book for them to read when they are older about something that happened a long time ago. I'd like to close with a poem based on a dream I had that was inspired by the pandemic, in the sense that I think that when I had this dream, I was trying to escape into some small happy memory from childhood. And the poem is named after a candy bar from many years back, and it was called Sky Bar. That's the name of the poem. Sky Bar. On your trip into the city, your mother let you get a Sky Bar from a newsstand because you told her you wanted to see if a Sky Bar from Manhattan tasted different from Brooklyn ones. She let go of your hand for a minute so you could walk up and give the money to the man. The wonderful yellow wrapper said Sky Bar in all caps, although you wouldn't have noticed or cared what caps were then. The Sky Bar had one separate puffed pocket for each filling: marshmallow, chocolate, caramel, and peanut butter. How they got each one in there was a miracle of science. And the best thing, was you didn't know which section had which filling. You could attempt to perceive the marshmallow gleaming stunningly white beneath the chocolate shell, but you were just imagining it. Or maybe the peanut butter was at that end, that disappointing, slightly grainy flavor that only your sister actually liked. ESP was big then, and you sometimes thought you could see through things with your mind, but usually it didn't work. And you couldn't bite the middle ones first, for God's sake, because that would crack the bar and ruin everything. But sometimes you could give yourself permission to eat one end and then the other, if you were willing to get meltier fingers and ruin the symmetry. The flavors must have always been in the same order, but you were too little to realize that and are bad at logic and direction to this day. All of a sudden, your mother wasn't there, and in your hand was something you'd never seen, a Spanish Sky Bar. Now there were two different kinds. There was Spanish writing on the front and back of the wrapper, which was still shiny yellow. It showed that it had 4 tropical fruits inside: guava, papaya, pineapple, and some unfamiliar, mysterious green delicacy. You were lost in Manhattan. It was the coolest thing. What was Sky Bar called in Spanish? You tried to see, but the afternoon sky got very dark, and then even darker, and your head started to hurt. You woke up age 60 in the pandemic, the world burning. Thank you very much.
Okay, this is Tom DiGidio. That was great, Carol. I'm wearing multiple hats today because in addition to being a grateful member of Suppose and Eyes, I also translate Italian poetry. And as well, I'm on the board of the New York Browning Society, dedicated to Robert and Elizabeth Barrett Browning. And I'm going to read a translation of an Italian poem that somehow combines all these things. And I'm going to introduce it for you because not long after Robert and Elizabeth Barrett Browning moved from London to Florence, there was the great 1848 year of revolutions all over Europe, very violent revolutions. And the Brownings witnessed right in front of their home in Florence, which is called the Casa Guidi and is a museum, a Browning museum today. They witnessed these huge revolutionary crowds gathering to protest against the tyrannical Austrian Grand Duke whose palace was nearby. And Elizabeth Barrett Browning movingly portrayed this pro-democracy movement in her poem called Casa Guidi Windows, describing this scene from her windows. And I'll just do a brief quote by Elizabeth Barrett Browning from Casa Guidi Windows to show her passionate revolutionary fervor. She said, "I love no peace, which is not fellowship, and which includes not mercy. I would have rather the raking of guns across the world and shrieks against heaven's architrave." The poem which I've translated, is by one of the leaders of that revolution in Florence, a poet named Giuseppe Giusti, with ties to the Brownings. And in the poem, I should explain one other thing. He speaks of a Chinese emperor of the poem, but that's in lieu of speaking of the Austrian emperor, who he's really talking about, in an effort to stay out of prison or something much worse. And that much worse is hinted at by the title of the poem, which is The Steam-Driven Guillotine. The Steam-Driven Guillotine by Giuseppe Giusti. In far China have they made a steam-driven machine to power their guillotine, which now in 3 hours the heads of 100,000 men devours. The instrument is now a hit, and their priests foresee with headlong progress that their country will soon be made civilized, while European man remains in the dark ages. The emperor is an honest man, a little hard, a little stingy, a little stupid, but in the main loves his subjects and the state and rewards the brilliant minds of his dominions. There was a rebellious people who paid resentfully their taxes and tolls, so the kindly emperor has tried out his machine in that region. The worth of that device has merited a pension for that talented executioner. And along with a patent, he's been dubbed a knight. A friar shouts, "How wonderful! We should baptize him as well," while our own petulant, pint-sized Caesar complains, "Why wasn't this genius born in my duchy?" Thank you very much. That was The Steam-Driven Guillotine by Giuseppe Giusti.
Okay, hello, my name is Virginia Badler. I published my first written poem when I was 8 years old and have continued publishing under that name, Virginia Lee Renke, which of course is my maiden name, my first name. I want to first thank our leader, Pat Green, and Valerie Loveland, who is here today, and the staff at Kelly Writers House for generously arranging this reading. I have 5 poems to read. Constructing the local pyramids. In miniature, of course, and in Vermont granite. To do it, I had to have myself declared owner of 2 small land plots on Long Island and in New Jersey, both empty of everything except mowed grass. Instead of slaves, I assembled masses of relatives to contribute for perpetual care, concrete bases, the stones themselves. Permissions were essential to the Catholics of New York. no one seemed to care in New Jersey. I count these two monuments as my accomplishments, my own small pyramids, memorials to mark where the dead lie and proclaim names before they are forgotten. Now all is finally written in stone. The second poem is about my dog, Joseph, who passed on August 3rd of this year. Joseph, on the edge of waking, I heard my dead dog barking, an echo of memory. I visited his grave in the early peach-tinted garden to see if there were any wrinkles in his brown earth blanket. There was only peace. My third poem is Living in the Forest. The inside of my house is a thick forest with so many leaves of paper. My chaos is natural. At times I excavate, find early treasures at the bottom of the pile where the undergrowth is thick and rich and sometimes rotten. I revel in the disorder where brown dust collects. Sometimes I remove the leaves and clean the forest floor, occasionally introduce a form of rain that temporarily washes away the compressed dirt. My two feral cats patrol and disapprove. My next poem is Bejeweled. Next to his navel, there is a bulge of bright, luminous yellow, like a topaz, since they removed his bladder, and he seems pleased, a seated god with an expanding jewel, which is emptied, resurrects continuously. And my last poem is August, the year I was 25. I had a pain well below my middle that gradually increased in intensity. My husband said we should fuck because that would take my mind off of it. It didn't. Finally, my old neighbor came over, noticed my distinctive gray color, suggested I call a doctor, who recommended the closest hospital emergency room. Bloodletting, not dripped into a bowl, but sucked out with a syringe, abdominal prodding, trying to provoke the maximum distress. Finally, they decided to cut my body open, suspecting appendicitis. When I woke up, they exclaimed, "That was hot, really hot." A gangrenous appendix ready to burst, facing backward, unusual, I was told, oddly consistent with my less rare left-handedness. They said they would put a slide of it in the library, and I knew, finally, some small part of me would be famous. Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Valerie Loveland. I am going to be reading poems from my manuscript about the 90s TV show Unsolved Mysteries. A facial composite of a criminal is not a picture of a person, it is a picture of a crime. An eyewitness commissions a portrait of a person she only met once. She picks from a stack of eyes like she is shopping, but the eyes are not the ones that committed this crime. The sketch artist thinks he is drawing a map to the criminal's home, a warrant, a key that fits the criminal's door and also fits a filing cabinet with the evidence. It is also a map to the victim's bodies. A jaw, a nose, a mouth, and eyes do not equal a face. Detectives can only provide a composite sketch, but trust Robert Stack's narration will fill in the drawing's missing details. The sketch looks exactly like him. The sketch doesn't look like him at all. Hidden treasure. I was going to skip this, but how could I when Robert Stack smiles in a certain financial way as he announces the treasure's modern value? He has enough money, but I think he might not have enough treasure. I don't believe in precious metals that don't bury themselves. When was the last time someone found gold that wasn't dust? Gold pretends to be human when it writes a map away from itself in an antique diary. It doesn't want someone's hands all over it again. It just finally finished wiping off fingerprints from the last time someone handled it. Gold knows it is only safe if it disappears. When a widower is interviewed on Unsolved Mysteries, when they go on the show, they know what to say. Even before the show, they know how to say they didn't do it. Nobody needs to say what it is. Every it is the same it, and every she is the same she. Why won't the camera record their hands during the interview? Why didn't someone put the wedding photo in their hands and record their expression? The wedding photo is not interviewed, but it knew as soon as the camera shutter opened what was going to happen 10 years later. Viewers get our own set of clues. We can tell by the room where they interview, by the shirts they wear. We know if they say a rough patch, rocky, struggling, not getting along, having problems. If they admit one thing, they admit everything. Unsolved Mysteries is not a TV show. It is a series of universal good deeds performed via telephone and television. It is the best way to be on the show without going to prison after. What does it mean if Robert Stack doesn't know something? I don't know how this is possible. Every time I dial my rotary phone, it feels like I am touching a person's open eye. I have never dialed my phone to help someone. We only remember seeing a specific person when Robert Stack reminds us. Everyone is a stranger until he tells us who they are. Robert Stack is a series of tubes. He is the root of a connective data structure, meets with us weekly so he can tell us what we need to know all at once. Asking Robert Stack to look for a something or a someone on Unsolved Mysteries is like looking for the someone on the internet. His voice box / larynx soaks up heights and weights / scars / timelines of events / videos of fires / orphans / amorphic music / fugue state / abandoned cars / cold night / police blotter / drops of blood / nightmares. And on camera, he wrings out that sponge. The wind blew open his trench coat, and I saw inside was not a body, but pipes and copper wires. He looks like an empty subway tunnel, not abandoned, but undiscovered, a secret packed away, sealed, waiting. This is my last poem, Even Robert Stack Dies. The internet told us all together, just like Robert Stack would have. Death happens to everyone, but how could his heart fail when Robert Stack has never failed a thing in his life? How can there be a death without also an investigation? How are we sure tears are sincere until the results come back from the lab? We don't know what happens in a mortuary without light that bends through a camera lens. Moths have been masticating all of Robert Stack's wool sweaters again. So many minuscule holes. I don't think he actually died. I look at my television screen and he's still there. Thanks so much, everybody.
Hi, I'm Janine. I'm reading here from West Philly, and a little bit about myself. I'm a reading specialist, and today the best part of my day was getting to hear my student wash a pot because his mother was so mad that she made him leave class to do so. Um, and so the series of poems I'm going to read have to do with women's stories, and I selected them on purpose. I was thinking about how a good friend of mine reminded me early on in the pandemic that after the 1918 pandemic, women got the right to vote. So here goes. So the first poem I'm going to read is called The Not Story. I don't know if you remember, if anyone remembers those Sugar Daddy caramel candy pops from somewhere around the 70s, 80s. So that will feature in here. The Not Story. Conjuring the whole class to laugh at my fourth grade treatise, not to marry and to have kids on my own, Miss Lane read my story as the not story. As my cheeks reddened, it became clear that I would not win the candy prize for the best story. Oddly, the prize was a super large sugar daddy, displayed in a large clear jar on top of her desk, the carrot that would lead us to compositions of literary greatness. Miss Lane's morning announcements were that she was single, and we should tell our parents in case they knew someone to set her up with. She said we all have an innate desire to marry, to absorb ourselves into another, a white dress desire, not a wild card dress that can have any value at the discretion of the wearer, a sugar daddy into which one places each fiber of our being. Or me, a fourth grade girl, trying to understand Miss Lane's undying devotion to marriage, trying to understand my small self, wondering what I was to place myself into. Okay. And then this next poem is called Rubbing Away the Mountains. And it's just about wonderment. So, rubbing away mountains. When I look at your pregnant belly, I am reminded that I am waiting for the birds to rub away mountains. Falling into your body like squirrels find holes in trees, I scamper into you through your blue eyes, stretching my existence in you, rounding my stomach into your protrusion. This moment was only a moment, nothing more than the man smoking a joint, fishing on the Wissahickon, without a care to catch a fish, only fishing, fulfilled by the experience and not dismayed by barren castings. Okay, and then this next poem is called The Youngest Daughter, and it's about the traditional role the youngest daughter had to take in my ancestors and my Italian family. And so my Aunt Connie, when she was close to 90, I took her to visit her family's old farmhouse in Mount Arlington, New Jersey, just before it was torn down. So here it goes. The youngest daughter. Great Aunt Connie stood in the living room, her handmade grass green dress, her silver Virgin Mary medallion, and cherry red lipstick smile, and asked, "What does it look like up in there, too old in her champy swollen ankles to make it up the half-rotted stairs?" I carefully ascended up into the 4 bedrooms, where 3 brothers, 3 sisters, and parents slept, describing to her the crinkled paint, graffiti, and old steam radiators that she said were put in after they sold the farm. Her words puffed out of her powdered pastry cheeks up through the lines of her silver white hair. Here is my kitchen. This is where my sisters and I made bread and pasta, just like my father liked. Carmen, the Italian, who became Charlie, the American, on Ellis Island. He would say, "Could you make the pasta today and cut them thin?" We hand cut each strand of spaghetti. Sun shining in through the weathered yellow paned window as she said, "This is my kitchen. This is where we kept the canned peaches. the last to leave at 40, the youngest daughter expected to take care of aging parents and not marry. Her 3 brothers still inherited the house and sold it, leaving her homeless. It seemed today that she laid herself to rest in what should have been her kitchen, her farm. She closed the door for the last time, just before the new hotel marked its grave, like a wife releasing the ashes of her dead husband. Okay. And the next poem I'm going to read is called Rhythm, to which I have none. But in the 90s, I had a lot of fun going to a drumming class. And Timo, a good friend, was the drumming teacher. And just to honor him, he passed last year from COVID. So, Rhythm. My drumming teacher says women are the bass, the mother rhythm. I say, caught in this undying rhythm, drumming to hold it all together, growing tired, like the woman who can bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan, and never let you forget you are a man. Without the bass, everything else drops. Everything drops. The bacon, the pan, the dinner plates, silverware, and all. Despite, women continue picking up the rhythm. Okay, and then this next poem is called Calling. And I wrote this poem while I was visiting Maine, just before I divorced. I wrote it in the early morning looking out onto the Schoodic Bay. Calling. Flat, fast-moving water, decorated with lobster trap buoys. Bright yellows, greens, blues, reds. Each lobsterman has his own color. Mostly 2 colors for easy painting. Functional art like a family crest. Buoy color displayed on his boat. Fog cluttered around Door Mountain. I await the early morning rumble of the solitary lobster boat checking traps in the slack tide when buoys can be seen. What comfort for the lobsterman to line his own path, have a self-ordained path to follow each morning. Watch the sun come out of the ocean. His ancestors knew how to keep the harvest going, throwing the smaller lobsters back to continue his family's tradition, their pact with the sea. Today, I marry myself to the tides like the lobsterman's self-reliance, wed myself to the open sea, ordain my path, follow my instincts, like the muscles that line my bones. Okay. And then my last poem is called Waiting. And I think in this pandemic, there's a lot of waiting, sometimes a lot of anxiety around that. But I think waiting can hold hope. So, waiting. Like the aphrodisiac of trying to record my favorite song, the 80s tape recorder pushed up against the radio, waiting for the DJ to play that one song. Pause button along with the record button pushed down. Pushing one down to record took the weight of a whole body funneled into one finger. So many lost parts of songs, so many unsure endings, trying to push at the right moment for that one song. Waiting to be unpaused. For your lips, the breath of my radio dies a little before it meets the mouth of the cassette recorder. Thank you.
My name is George McDermott. Helen is my wife, in case you can see that at the bottom. I'm going to be reading 5 poems. They are not thematically related, except in that they are things I've been thinking about in order to avoid thinking about the thing that nobody wants to think about. The first is called A Change in the Weather. It's in 3 parts. First, in the molten chill of March, when rain bubbles as if boiling, and plumes of vapor rise like steam, shrinking the distance between fire and ice. We try to measure ambient facts, wind speed, humidity, barometric pressure, as if the truth of a moment can somehow be known before it has passed. Second, and then we see the ruins, the rivers slow, reservoirs dry, fields of feathers like fallen leaves, the smoke obscuring familiar hilltops. And then we feel the floodwaters rising, the beaches fouled with strangled fish, the clouds of desperation hung like a curse across our skies. 3. These are the bridges burned to gain a bit of light. This is the end of artistry, lost among the poses. Second poem is called Rangoon. My fire team was sent that day to search a tunnel under the jungle, the place where the night raiders hid. But most had already melted away. There were only a few left behind, grotesque, unmoving, soft, and silent. We didn't know how they had died or what we should do. I held my breath. I sat on my heels and tried to think. I thought if I turned quickly enough, I might catch a glimpse of my room at home. I listened for echoes of grasshopper mornings, for the thump of the rotors to fade away. I tried to imagine myself escaping to Rangoon, Bohemia, Zanzibar, some poignant name on an outdated map. Today, I still listen, still try to imagine, but there are days, more frequent days, when death in the tunnel is all I remember. The mud on my heels, the buzzing insects, the hollowed eyes and gaping mouths, the fading turquoise dream of Rangoon, and the motionless blur of my life today. The nursing assistants have done their job, and the terrace is filled with partial men, parked in our wheelchairs, soft and silent, wondering whose lives we're living now. Third poem is called Analogues of Gravity. 3 sections. The first is called Distance. No twos in digital space, only zeros and ones, on and off, male or female, binary code. But when up becomes right and wrong becomes left and down cracks to nothing beneath your feet, how brief the fall, how final the mercy of its end. Acceleration. Hysterical voices calling names, pulsing lights on twisted faces, the distortion of shape and shading, time and alignment. Can you count the things you left behind? When do the things you left behind becomes the things you lost? Terminal velocity. The cry of a fox in the night, like the sound of an old woman weeping. And then we weep in siren screams, the air itself dark and heavy. Next one is actually a Philadelphia poem. It's called Logan's Circle. The subtitle is Pope Francis Visits Philadelphia. Here is the confluence, a perfect circle incised within another circle, centered inside an elongated square. The Father, the Son, and the whispering ghost. Here the currents flow unseen beneath the spray and the flood, and the soul is apportioned by cardinal points, the green swans, turtles, solemnified frogs, and the brownstone interstices of Peter and Paul, where the air turns dark with moths of assumption, fluttering, falling like ashes of sunsets. Here are the morning and evening lessons, how waters flow through other waters, how rivers grow old, how rivers are lost. Final poem is called Protocols of Compensation. It's got a lot of sections. It's 6 sections. First, in China, suicides hang themselves in the doorways of those who've caused their pain. The peasant's wife at her landlord's home, the philosopher at the temple's gate. 2. And here you are, lurking again like the stain of persistent memory. Why do you come always to stand in these of all the shadows I've cast? Why do you choose always to speak beneath the hum of our lingering moments? 3. Historians describe a ripple effect from every stone that's ever been cast. The artists find the evidence in the swarming red tides, the featureless gray dawns, the perfect storms consuming the earth. But no one hears the scientists, and the waves still sing us to sleep. 4. When the refuse of stars falls dimly on rooftops and assumptions are clouded like the smoke in Orion, I can believe that some of our deaths may not have been in vain. But I cannot share your faith in what will be. I have memories still of those we once revered and those we couldn't become. 5. A deer, they say, will never venture more than a mile from the place of its birth. Here is the lure of habitual dreams, the soothing promise of repetition, the treacherous comfort that lurks in familiar smiles, disguising the teeth. Here is the air perfumed with the smell of defeat. 6. And here is my apostasy. The line between human and God is today as vague as it was to the Greeks. We need no one's forgiveness but our own. That's it.
Wow, thank you, George. That was so powerful. My name is Mabel. Thank you, everyone, for being here this evening. I'm a teacher from Philadelphia, and I first joined Suppose and Eyes about 7 years ago. But in the last 2 to 3 years, I haven't really had too much time to come to workshop meetings, but I am really glad to be still a part of the poetry readings, which I've always enjoyed. Tonight, I am going to be reading 5 poems, and all of them were written within the last 6 months. Some of them speak to the experience of being in lockdown. Others are kind of a meditation on space, on different encounters I've had, on memory. And finally, I just want to add that more than ever, I'm extremely grateful for spaces like this where poetry can be shared and experienced together. So thank you. The first poem I'm going to read is called Room, and it's actually about the room that I'm currently in, which I've spent a lot of time in the last 9 months or so. Room. Day begins and vanishes here, verdant leaf underside of life. Spectacular, the in-betweens of neighborhood houses, fencing and darkened rooftops lit by a singular fluorescence that a restless tree constellates. Faint birds in the morning, squirrel rattling the chain links at night. A space that buoys up the slag of solitude, throws long shadows to mask the blueprint of fear, puts tracks to thought's rough path. Flat surfaces hold us up. There's no seeking which stops, no breath that grants grace to the storm. Paint patterns swirl on the wall. Unfurling to listen, my eyes bloom and burgeon into recessed air, spiral over the illusion of stillness, reflections doubled duplicity. An instrument, a corner chair. Behind the closed door, I sense my mortality. The second poem I'm going to read is called Phosphorescent. We sway against music sloshing between our temples, watch the soft pulse, a sea of moss green points riddle the air above the darkened field. Soft-bodied entities and their beguiling flares approach, but with caution, invitation to cling, expire. Never in our backyard childhood have we seen so many speckling the dark with Morse code dots, the tender light let out in poised pursuit. Sky inks onyx blue beyond tall grasses, and the night is warm, Our bare city feet skim the dew, find traction in considering if our faraway loves can see this tidal of wanting in the kindle of insect hearts, enough to signal back through the ever-present beacons of our phones. Meanwhile, we attempt speech. My confused tongue canters ahead of me as I melt into the grass. The next poem is called Shadow Film. My body turns back into itself. Chest cavity finds femur's length. Lungs recall, to inhale deeply is not everyone's right. Imprinted on the cool green of the back wall, shadows of window plants inked in negative on the sill's black mirage. Succulents, spiny limbs, their spirit inverse flickering as unlit flames on this plane, an urgent underside to hope, fabricated, the untruth sifting through diaphanous fronds, the longer I hold my breath. Wash of leaves, tidal wind onto the moving picture of not there, not felt. And when the November air picks up, driving through the trees, the dark lips of the shadow plants shake, blend, merge, morph in disconsolate shimmer to remind me this afternoon too has disappeared. The next poem is called Clearfield Lot. Gray sky over empty parking space, patches on faded murals, lines scraped, fake flowers spell the love lot in red, and on the other side of the fence, hope. Flattened cans and bright orange needle cap buds dot the perimeter. Our tents welcome the rain's soft tap as we lay out paper bag lunches and talk about our lives before all this. Strangers sidle up, tired and thin, wheeling worn bicycles with baskets, wanting water, sandwiches, water, decayed sidewalks around us, houses leaning, blown out car, a body crouched in languid euphoria. Now we search each other's eyes for a smile's residual past the masks, reconciliation, avoidance. Are we looking closely enough? Through the distance between this momentary corner and the L tracks, which ride up against fate's faultiness, the hard-knobbed, slouched backs of forgotten bodies whose stairs graze refuse-ridden gutters, expect nothing more from what this day could grant, split teeth bared to utter a parting, God bless. And my last poem is called The Unlived Lives of My Father. And there's a little parenthetical that starts the poem. 8th grade, and for the first time, no honor roll. My face is a mess of shame. He tries to cheer me up. You're crying about that? Grow some thicker skin. At work today, somebody told me to learn English or go back home. And I pictured him eating a sandwich alone in the factory locker room and cried harder. Number 1. His hands brush black shine onto a lucky pair of shoes, fixed crisp shirt and briefcase carrying history books, bifocals. 2. At the company canteen, he is eating rice and pork, chopsticks held midair as his laugh skims the midday hum. 3. His mother at last understood in a dream what their lives came to be, stopped invoking God, and saw his face instead. 4. Morning light glints solemnly on the lip of his teacup. His slow slurp of noodles is time unaccounted for. 5. Old friends at the fish shop, high school chums passing on the River Avenue, colleagues, dim sum debates get heated. 6. One daughter is hard enough. His younger brother is still alive. carries my sister on his shoulders, sibling to no one now. 7. He finds comfort in small luxuries, a piled rug, painless knee, ice cream, vanilla bean, tap of rain on reminiscence. That is all. Thank you all.
Hi. Thank you, Mabel, for reading your poetry. I thought they were really reflective of the current time that we're in. My name is Lisa, and I'm going to be reading some poems today. I just wanted to remind you, I do have a book out. It's called Delta. You can find it on Amazon if you just type in my name. And some of the poems I'm going to be reading today are actually in that book. All right. So the first poem I'm going to be reading for you today is titled Alche. Alche is a Bengali word that literally translates to laziness. Hard against my soft hands, the twisting branches of the bush I'm crawling through, knees digging through dry dirt, brown as burnt pasta, a shade harsher than my skin. It crumbles against the outlines of my body, round shoulders and swollen torso, thick arms and thicker legs. It entwines with my even darker hair. In its warmth, I find comfortable indentations. The ground pulls me closer, just enough room between bristles for one breath, maybe another, if the earth would swallow me some more. Pastel, unreal, shining blue peeks at me in scratches and spots between bundles on branches. Where it touches, I feel numb. Everywhere else, I am skin and bone and muscle so heavy. The second poem I'm going to be reading is titled River Dance. Her hair jingles with bells that skip through the air to where the water begins its spells. Her eyes close, back curves in a half-moon pose, smooth cheeks. Beating against the ledge is the rush and humdrum of the rustling river just over the edge where she dances in tune with her slapping bare feet full of cherry-sweet romances. I'm sorry, she cries. But why does she have to be sorry if the river does not even try? Her golden skirt like a kite billows once, then thrice, shimmers in the moonlight. Her energy comes from the water, comes from the breathing in and out of air not stained, with the clay from the studio of the potter, her father. Painted feet swerve to a stop. There are only two sounds in the air tonight, her twinkling harebells, and the roaring river's water swells. The next poem is titled Blood Outside the Body. I cannot stand the stench of blood, I think, walking underneath my umbrella. The rain had just begun to fall. Neon red rays melted onto wet tar roads, a deep, husky, wet earth smell sniveling up from them. This I don't mind. The occasional swish of rain on my toe, I don't mind. Blood is angry, is sharp and cold, ponderous in our hands. It shouldn't be seen, be known. I am walking uphill, against the heavy rain, against a slippery stone path, and the water barreling downhill, swirls and eddies blooming, whose small whirlpools drown my feet. The trees stand tall, against a deeply gray, moody sky. They shake, and this smells fresh. I hear the sunset thunder, melted neon light on roadways red, my legs drenched, blood outside the body. This next poem is titled Green Dragon. The first day we moved into our new house was a rainy one. 4 walls and a roof, the sharp prick of rain pinging from wall to wall through empty rooms. not like the townhouses I remembered, knees knocking on humid summer mornings as eyes blinked open, pausing for a second before stretching their crystallized limbs and creaking staircases, their brown feet curled over the beds and into mini lawns, parched and brittle, soles pushing against each other while sweat gathered in our necks. The legs of our new house were set one on top of the other, its arms crossed and face lifted genially towards the sun, no want for space, no cracking of the bones. Open shutter eyes watched me scuttle away towards the green dragon. Green against the rain, the green dragon's lights blinked wearily. Inside of the store simmered in the late summer heat, linoleum tiles lukewarm and coated in wet brown footprints. I wondered, plastic seat cushions squeak ringing in my ears, about General Tso's chicken and how deeply orange it was in my memory and whether it would be paler here. Salty sweat ran together with acidic rain gathering in my neck. And the last poem I'm going to be reading is titled The Painted Lady. She is like a whisper, skimming the surface of reality, gliding with ease between the provable and that which is belief. I wait for her to come. To catch even a sliver of her whisper, I strain my ears, pull them off my skull, so that I may be witness. My body floats in the dark-lit air of the night. When she moves, so do I. Painted, of course she is, but that is all they know. When she has come, I know it by this. Her presence, her being, is an ocean on my back, is a wet rampage shuddering down my spine. Her voice is in the shift of a veil, a low, quiet whistle tumbling in the winds that I follow. She stops, tilting her head. I catch but a glimpse of her gaze reflecting up at me, a deluge of darkness and pure, untainted light.
I'm Ross Bender, and this is Babylon System. When they carried me down from Canada to this country, to the excited States, already the rites were martial and harsh, and the music was perverse. I sensed as only a child can sense that something was rotten, the lust for neat things, the thrill of acquisitiveness, the joy of beggaring your neighbor, orgasmic survival of the fittest, with strange fruit hanging from demonic trees. This terrifying, ghostly, fiendish swamp whose creed was ultimate selfishness, whose blood was running money. How long ago, yet nothing has changed. Drear mental concrete walls, big mouth TV swallowing infants whole, brick ugly factory of high schools, Negroes in gulags, while billionaires whistle and spin. Kolimpsky heights of the mind, a phalanx of fascist redneck school principals, tin soldiers, and Nixon's coming with the Ku Klux Klan, Proud Boys in brown shirts not far behind. How quantify torture? I've been in maximum security lockdown since 1960. Oh yes, they got my number coming down over the border when they carried me down, an innocent, a naive. The next year they tried to blow up Cuba. They shot a Kennedy, then another, and crucified King. Oh yeah, they got Malcolm X and John Lennon for good measure. They lathered naked Asian girls with jellied napalm. How to quantify terror? So I opened my mind and the revolution ran through. Police on horseback, bare hooves drumming on my frontal lobes. Those drums, those shaman drums boosted me up the world tree. I flew, saw it all from above. mile-high posters of Mao in Hong Kong, the 7th Fleet in harbor, and the GI R&R brothels in Taiwan. I saw the monks flaming in the streets in Saigon like the flower burning in the day. I opened my mind and the revolution ran through, smoking on Harlem rooftops, summer of '68 with Michael and Bebop, breathing the ashes of the spring riots, the King riots, and the military junkies in the methadone clinics, Harlem awash in heroin thoughtfully provided by the CIA to cool things down. I opened my mind and the revolution ran through, summer of '69 on the Lower East Side with comrades in arms, raising the consciousness, directing wild-eyed exorcisms to the Pentagon from Tompkins Square Park. Oh, we thought that by changing our minds, we'd transform the thoughts of the beast. We opened our minds and the revolution ran through. We thought that by changing our minds, we might somehow purify the mind of the beast. But the beast just laughed, drummed on our frontal lobes, twisted our ganglia for sport. I was just a kid, but I saw something was wrong and I wanted to change the world. I got high, and I'm glad I did because I opened my mind and saw the truth of the Babylon system, world controlled by demonic operators in black hole, cosmic power hierarchies, vampires sucking the blood of the sufferers and the wretched of the earth. Then they locked me up because I knew too much here and there in shackles and restraints, here and there in screaming ugliness, chemical dungeons, and junked Coney Islands of the mind. Oh, today I was reading Howl, rereading Rexroth and Ferlinghetti, the whole boatload of sensitive, useless old beats, and it all made sense again, a cogent analysis. For times have changed and nothing has changed. Dharma bums and queers and Quakers still immolate themselves at the Pentagon while policemen kneel on their necks, CIA and Sacklers dispensing crack and OxyContin. Since they brought me down to this country, it's been one damn thing after another. Vietnam, coups in Chile and Grenada, the disappeared, Contra wars, genocides in Guatemala, soulless Congress, lying presidents prancing at Guantanamo, Iraq, Afghanistan, black sites, black lives in the American Gulag archipelago. 1 step forward, 10 steps back. We got rid of Nixon, then in marched the Reagan counter-revolution, Thatcherism in America, all minds left behind, now Nazis in the Capitol, and welcome to Camp Auschwitz. The money changers still set up daily in the temple again, no surprise. Moloch wants you for America's unending wars. Flower children resisted, but the fascists beat you down. Mario Savio told us to throw ourselves on the wheel, but really, dude, how many times can the children jump in the river, break self on wheel of karma, dharma? What the hell, it stinks here. No joy in this cell, no solution here. The genetic chemical restraint bashes my head against its gray and stupefied walls, lack love and vicious, cancer production, center of the world, straitjackets, inquisitors, the overlords survey you in the television panopticon of the arch neoliberal Jeremy Bentham. You tried to escape and you failed. The brain police locked you up, manacles on your wrists and ankles on the electric iron piano, shocked you back with electricity screaming, give us the names, give us the names. You killed yourself and they dragged you back from the dead to be a zombie slave, a useful cart horse for the bourgeoisie. Resistance is futile, robot overlords assure you in their never-ending, dull, static songs. Und Arbeit macht frei, and we're on the eve of destruction. But look now, somewhere the little children are singing new songs, drumming in the streets. Hey, graybeards, hold on, you're coming, we're overcoming. They're chanting again, Make love, not war. Keep hope alive. Save the sacred ancient planet from its apocalyptic doom conflagration. Change the times, change the channels. Plant flowers in the bayonets once again. And hark, the light breaks. Somewhere thrill codes blaze in the skylights. New lands, new horizons, new conjunctions among ancient stars. Now Pegasus in yoke sprouts wings. Oh, let's all fly away to the further shore and make love in London and Tibet. Gatte, gatte, para gatte, parasam gatte, bodhi saha. Go, go, go together, go further than beyond. Soar together to the next shore, the next horizon, to the bliss of awakening. For Babylon is fallen and America is damned.
All right, everybody, that is our reading. Thank you super much, Kelly Writers House, for hosting us. Thank you, poets, and thank you to